that board game publishing company might not actually be interested in your board game design. I'm Mondo. I'm the senior developer of hobby games at The Op, which is known for T-Witches and Fountains, and I'm here to help you with your board game design. When I started designing games 10 years ago, I had a very different understanding of what it meant for a publisher to be interested in my game. I had many pitch meetings where the publisher said kind things about the design and maybe took home a sell sheet or two. Back then, I believed that was enough to ensure that the publisher was likely to seriously consider my game as an option to be published by their company. As I progressed as a designer and have had several designs signed and eventually published, the standards by which I determine whether a publisher is truly interested in a design has shifted dramatically. Just because a publisher takes home a sell sheet doesn't mean that they're actually interested. Let's talk about why. It's important first to understand the different phases that a board game submission will go through prior to being published and available on a retail shelf out there in the world. When you pitch a game to a publisher, especially at a convention or another setting where they're analyzing and receiving multiple pitches in a short amount of time, their expression of general interest is usually manifested in their request for a sell sheet or an explainer video to highlight the game's features and how it's played. This is the most basic level of interest, and I would guess that they take home information on about 10% of every designs that they see during one of these extended pitch opportunities. Now, they may attend 10 to 15 conventions a year, receiving hundreds and often thousands of pitches. So being in that top 10% of designs from that one event does not mean that you're in the top 10% of all of designs that they'll see in a given year. So it's important to keep those expectations tempered a little bit. If they do show enough interest to request additional materials, they'll most likely take those materials and analyze your design submission in-house. Out of those submissions that go through that level of analysis, if your game stands out enough, they'll then proceed to the next level of analysis, which involves requesting a playable version of your game. This may be a digital version or a print and play file or an actual physical copy that they ask you to send them. From there, the game will need to be played multiple times and undergo pretty rigorous scrutiny to determine whether it's something that they want to continue pursuing or not. This looks different for different publishing companies, but for us at The Op, if my team likes a design after we've played it, we send it to the head office where a bunch of other people in the company will need to play it and sign off on it as a potential game for us to make. That could be up to 24 people and half a dozen playthroughs. Now, for smaller publishing companies, it could just be maybe 1 or 2 people that are analyzing these designs, but they'll still most likely want to play it multiple times before considering seriously pursuing it. I'm going to pause here to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the content. I appreciate the support as always. Now for me, if a game of mine has undergone this level of analysis and scrutiny and remains something that the publisher wants to continue pursuing, it's at that point that I would say that a publisher is actually interested. But having interest along these lines doesn't guarantee that the game will be published. Because for a game to make it onto a shelf, that company has to believe in it as a financially viable product that lines up with their publishing direction and appeals to their specific curated audience. That's a lot of variables in play, and it's absolutely not uncommon for a game that a publisher really enjoys to be rejected because it doesn't align with some of these other ideals. This happens all the time, both to us and to other publishers. And it can be really frustrating when it gets to that point and still gets rejected. Because beyond that, there are a lot of financial and business-oriented decisions and considerations that can keep a game from getting published. These can include the cost of production, shifting trends in a greater industry, or similarities to other games, or complicated timelines, all of which can keep a good game from being published. Now, what's frustrating for designers is that almost all of this is out of your hands. There are a lot of pieces in play that you have no control over. The parts that you do have control over beyond the quality of your game design is your flexibility and understanding and the professionalism with which you interact with a publisher that's considering your design. So it's important to remain patient and professional because even if the game in question doesn't get published by a particular publisher, making a good impression with that publisher will keep the door open for future opportunities. Every pitch is a networking opportunity and you should always treat it as such. Because it's also important to note here that publishers talk, so if a publisher has a bad experience with a designer during a pitch meeting, they will most likely tell their friends, and then your reputation as someone pitching games will be impacted in a negative way, and the next publisher might not be interested in hearing your pitch. That's real, that happens, you should be aware of it. But all in all, it's a wild and unpredictable thing, but it's important to understand the layers that a game design must go through to end up on a retail shelf. A publisher's interest can carry pretty loose terms, but for me, it takes a lot to consider any game design of mine to be a serious option for the publisher that I'm pitching to. So keep grinding away and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Networking and remaining professional and honing your design skills and refining the games that you're working on through playtesting and creative problem solving are your greatest tools in getting your games published. I hope this was helpful and thanks for watching.